everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I am Seth Galvin, and you are watching the Ludus Press's live broadcast covering the 2015 E3 Nintendo Direct and the 2015 E3 Square Enix press conference. I believe these two things are going to overlap. So, seeing as I can only watch one stream at once, I might watch the Nintendo one live, come back, talk about it, and then watch the Square Enix one after the fact, just because logistically I can't watch two things at the same time. I'm not that multi talented. So, depending on I'm not sure how long the Nintendo Direct is supposed to last, but if it lasts the hour and a half that both Sony and Microsoft's press conferences did, then it is going to run into Square Enix's press conference, which is supposed to start at 1:00 p.m. So we'll see. If that occurs, then we'll just have to watch the Square Enix one after the fact, which is too bad. I was really looking forward to the Square Enix one, but we'll watch it. Just will not likely be live if there's more than one going on at a time. Schedule your things right, people. Don't overlap your press conferences. Ridiculous. Anyways, I will talk about the Square Enix one now, just in case I do get to watch it live. So let's talk about Nintendo and Square Enix. We are on day 2 of E3 yesterday. I think almost everyone can agree was a truly extraordinary day at E3. I think it's one of those days that is going to go down in history as one of the single greatest days of E3 that we will ever experience in our lifetimes. And there was some talk last night after I recorded my response that Sony was pulling on people's heartstrings to cover the fact that they have very little announced coming for this calendar year, and to an extent that is entirely true. And I don't think that the fact that they showed some very fascinating looking stuff coming up in 2016 and beyond makes up for the fact that this year from them is very, very limited. But on the same token, Sony is known to have some slow years. And especially at the beginning of a console cycle, look at their exclusives lineup from 2007. If on the PS3, it was not very good. Last year's lineup was significantly better than their 2007 PS3 exclusive lineup, and this year, which would be sort of the equivalent of the 2008 PS3 year, does not look significantly worse than that lineup looked. The main thing I know launched that year was Little Big Planet, which was a great game. We did get Bloodborne this year, so as far as if you want to go blow for blow with quality exclusives, as far as I can remember, both had one quality exclusive in their second full year on the market, and Sony's put out several other exclusive titles this year, maybe not as high quality ones, but I would say there have been more AAA exclusives released for the PS4 at this point in its life cycle than there were for either the PS2 or the PS3, and definitely the PS1. So Sony often takes a while to get their footing in a new console generation, and they've always delivered. So I'm not too worried in the long term about what Sony has on offer. They'll get their shit together, and it may take a year longer than it will take the other companies, and that's okay. That's fine. But on the same token, I didn't buy one of these things at launch expecting that I would have things to play on it that I couldn't play anywhere else. But anyone who did make said purchase just wasn't looking historically at Sony's record with console launches, or they wouldn't have made that purchase with that expectation, because Sony never in their entire history has had an exceptionally strong console launch. This has honestly been a much stronger launch for them than the PS3 was by far, and better than the PS1 by miles, and probably arguably even better than the PS2. So Microsoft is just really, really good at getting stuff out quickly. Their logistics stuff is obviously just in a much better place than Sony's is, and they're a more focused company, and they're a software company first, so that lets them focus. They have more experience releasing software on a schedule than Sony does, so they have the advantage there. But let's talk about today. Nintendo is starting things off in about 20 minutes with a Nintendo Direct. It's pre-recorded. Last year's was pretty hilarious. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought, as far as making an entertaining show goes, I think they were far and away the standout achievement of last year's E3. And I honestly think that Nintendo Direct all but proved the argument that there shouldn't be physical press conferences occurring anymore, because let's face it, these things aren't press conferences anymore. They're big theatrical shows, and they're meant to be viewed for entertainment by millions of people, not by a handful of press who are not especially excited about being there in the first place because they just spent 12 hours the previous day being there. So yeah, I think Nintendo's choice to move this to something digital was really smart. It makes it so that they can avoid any sort of technical foibles, and it lets them deliver the best performances from people who are not professional actors. So it really provided the best experience, I think, that a company has given at E3. So hopefully this year's will live up to that. And as far as the content goes, I talked a bit about it last night, but there is confirmed to be no more Zelda footage showing this year, so that's off the table. As far as other announced stuff, they have Yoshi's Woolly World in the works that is coming very shortly, so that will almost certainly get a trailer, but probably just I would be surprised if it got more than a short trailer, just because it is coming out in just the next couple months, I believe. And after that, they have Mario Maker in the works. I believe it's now called Super Mario Maker, is the official title they are going with. And that has gotten some very good reactions at E3 so far, so we'll likely see more of that. I would not be surprised to see a second Mario title, maybe a 3D one, or a handheld thing, 2D New Super Mario Brothers style game from them as well. They also could have something from the Paper Mario or Mario and Luigi series on display, the RPG Marios, as it may be. And outside of Mario, they are confirmed to be showing Firefox. Yeah, Star Fox. Sorry. Oh my god. It has been a long E3, guys. Sorry. They're confirmed to be showing Star Fox that's something that Miyamoto has been working on personally for a couple of years now. So I'm interested to see how that has turned out. They teased at Retro that they might be attending this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Metroid Prime is such an excellent fit for the Wii U, utilizing the gamepad as your helmet visor. I think would provide some really fascinating gameplay scenarios, because you can have the TV continue to show the combat visor while having the scanning visor as your gamepad view, and you could, instead of having to uh, select and stare at specific objects, you can just tap them on the screen, and I feel like it would make a really great experience as far as the scanning goes in the series, and could open up some interesting new mechanics for the various environmental puzzles that Metroid is famous for. So I really do hope that they have a Metroid Prime to show off this year. I'm just going to be super disappointed if none ever shows up this whole generation, because it just is one of the franchises of Nintendo's to me that seemed like such a perfect fit when they announced this machine, that I'm surprised it's taken this long for it to get out there. The other sort of perfect fit I always thought for the Wii U gamepad was Mario Kart, and they released Mario Kart, but they did not include the feature that I thought was a super smart fit for the system, which was a track editor. Because you have a stylus controlled touchpad, you can make quite accurate tracks. I mean, chances are Nintendo's level designers are using a trackpad with a stylus to design these levels that they included in the game themselves. So I was very surprised to not see any sort of level editing component in Mario Kart, but they have released DLC for that, so maybe they'll release a level editor DLC. It again seemed like a really obvious choice to me. Track editing is significantly more easy with a touchscreen than it is with an analog stick. Obviously, it is most easy probably with the combination of mouse, keyboard, and a track, an actual trackpad, not a touch screen. But still, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. So I don't know how they overlooked that. There are a couple other things of theirs that over the years that I thought would have been a really smart choice. I've said several times, I think some sort of fantasy Dungeons and Dragons inspired title that has the one player playing at the dungeon master role on the gamepad, placing traps with the touchscreen and monsters and game logic and such. As we've seen several developers this E3 demonstrate some usable mode making, level making, gameplay making, logic stuff that it could work very easily on the Wii U, and having that sort of local multiplayer experience and capturing, I think, a lot of what makes D&D, the tabletop game, special in a video game form in a way that hasn't been captured yet. I just felt like the Wii U was a perfect fit for that as well, because what we saw BioWare attempting, and they did eventually cancel it, but they attempted to do something similar last year with an online title. But I think that D&D really works best when you're all in the same room together, and the only system that could provide that experience, in my mind, was the Wii U. So it's another thing that just seems so obvious to me, and that Nintendo has obviously not felt was something worth exploring up to this point. So I don't know why that is the case. Other than that, I think the Fire Emblem game, that the Shin Megami Tensei crossover, I think that is a good fit for a touchscreen. Strategy games in general are something that don't work super well with a D-pad or an analog stick. So having a touchscreen driven interface, and especially when utilizing a stylus, not your finger, is really the best way on a console you can control that. So those are, I think, are a good fit as well. Outside of that, we are almost certainly going to see at least a trailer for the new Xenoblade Chronicles. They have no Kirby game announced it to be in the works right now, which is pretty rare for them. They usually have multiple Kirby games in the pipeline, so I would have to imagine they'll have, excuse me, a Kirby game there to show. And other than that, I would be very open to some surprise announcements by Nintendo. Obviously, Sony knocked it out of the park yesterday with surprises, and both they and Microsoft had really fascinating new IPs. In their case, Sony's, that is, being Horizon from Guerrilla Games, the mech dinosaur hunting RPG, and in Microsoft's case, they had Recore, the action adventure game from Kenji Inafune and Armature Studios. So I'd be super pleased if we also somehow managed to get a completely new and fascinating IP from Nintendo as well. But of all of the companies that give press conferences at E3, Nintendo is the most averse to releasing new IPs. But hey, they had a very successful launch of Splatoon just a couple weeks ago. So hopefully that is a sign of things to come. And Splatoon was a very different game for them. So I hope they continue taking risks and branching out like that, because when they hit it, they really they knock it out of the park. They don't miss very often when they do decide to swing, because they're very careful in what they release on their console. And we've got just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to quickly talk about Square Enix just very briefly. If the conference at Nintendo does break into when Square Enix starts, then instead of watching the back half first, I will come back and talk about Square Enix, and then watch the whole thing recorded after the fact. So until we get to that point, though, let me just say quick couple words about Square Enix. I think they have an absolutely astonishing lineup. Just astonishing lineup this year. Absolutely worthy of a press conference, more worthy than, honestly, any of the third parties that have shown games off at E3 thus far. From their Western Eidos originated studios, they have Hitman, they have Tomb Raider, they have Deus Ex. And from their Western studios, or sorry, from their Eastern studios, mainly in Japan, they have Final Fantasy 15, which they have confirmed is not going to be here. So that was initially disappointing, but now that we see there's World of Final Fantasy, there's Final Fantasy 7 Remake, so plenty of Final Fantasy from their Eastern teams. And there is a new Star Ocean in the works. There is a new Dragon Quest in the works. So they have just a really astounding number of games they are developing that have a really lot of potential. Kingdom Hearts 3 is not confirmed to not be here, so maybe we'll see more of that. Just a ton of stuff, a ton of really awesome looking stuff, honestly. So I'm super excited to see what they have on display. They were actually the third party I was most looking forward to watching, but we might have to watch that pre recorded. And until that time, though, I am going to be signing off for at the very least an hour and a half, and at most more than or more around 2.5 hours, and we will return either after Nintendo's press conference. If that goes over an hour, then I will be back in 1.5 hours. If that does not go into Square Enix's press conference, then I'm going to watch Square Enix's press conference live before I return. So I will not be back here then for about 2 hours and 15 minutes or so. So depending on how those go, you will know when to return. And I can't tell you that till after it happens. So check back and we'll see what I can do. Uh, in the meantime, enjoy the press conferences. They are again available on YouTube, on Twitch, on the uh, websites of the publishers themselves. So plenty of places to watch them. Giant Bomb, I know, is doing a broadcast where they talk over the event, and obviously you can get feeds on major gaming websites, GameSpot, IGN, what game trailers, whatever you want to watch your E3 press conferences on, you can do so. I'm not going to waste my bandwidth attempting to stream it from here. Just watch it in some other screen and return here when you're done. So until that time, I'm going to sign off, go watch the conferences, and I will be back in a couple of hours. Hello, everyone. I have returned for my final time at E3 2015. I have given up on trying to watch the PC conference later today. I am just too conferenced out, but let's do the recap of the final couple shows that we saw today. So, I'm going to prepare a couple notes and we'll get started in just a minute or two. Uh, give people time to get back on, and we will get started in just a moment. So give me a couple minutes, and then I will be discussing the Nintendo Direct and the Square Enix press conference. Okay, let us start with Nintendo. So, Nintendo Direct this year was maybe not quite as impressive as last year's from a presentational standpoint. I thought the whole battling executives shtick from last year's thing was more entertaining than the Muppet shtick from this year's thing. But you know what? It was still better than any of the actual speeches given at any of the press conferences. So I can only bash it so much. And I do like the way they present their executives with these extreme personalities that I'm sure they do not actually possess. So on to the actual games shown. I have to admit I was not especially impressed by this lineup, and maybe it was just the lack of excitement that you get when you're not presenting this stuff live, but a lot of the announcements feel pretty rote, pretty familiar, and lacked a lot of the creative spark we saw with last year's announcements. But let's go through both the new trailers and the new games. The show started off with a look at the new Star Fox, which is now officially titled Star Fox Zero, and in the Treehouse event afterwards, it was explained that this is essentially a reimagining of the first game with completely new levels and gameplay and such. So that is why they went with the Zero title. And it looks like pretty much exactly what you would expect from Wii U Star Fox, where the gamepad is used as the cockpit view and TV screen shows an external third-person view of the action, and you use the gyroscope to aim and the analog sticks to move and to perform dodges and barrel rolls. So nothing especially surprising there. I think that's pretty much what people were expecting to occur, and it didn't look super impressive from a visual standpoint either. It didn't look bad, but it didn't look as exceptional as some of the other first-party Wii U titles we've seen. So that was maybe a little disappointing. And they also showed off the new transformations that your ship can perform, turning into a tank and a helicopter slash hovercraft of sorts, and a mech, I believe. So that will obviously add some gameplay variety to the series. But other than that, I wasn't super impressed by the trailer. Like I said, it didn't look bad. It didn't look as exceptional as some of the big openers at the other press conferences. So, yeah, kind of meh on that. Continuing on with previously announced games, the Hyrule Warrior Legends port for the 3DS was finally shown off officially. It is as I said, a port of the Wii U title, just with some additional content and obviously down-resed for the weaker system. And there was nothing really additional that we didn't know already from leaks that was revealed, but it does look like more of the same Hyrule Warriors, which is Tecmo Koei's thing. Just keep re-releasing it until money appears in your hands. That works, right? It does for Tecmo Koei, I guess. Anyways, after that, they went into something of a Fire Emblem segment, where they showed off Fire Emblem If, as it is called in Japan, with a new US trailer that revealed a different title for the United States. It is going to be called Fire Emblem Fates here, and it looks like Fire Emblem. I always really love the cinematic stuff they do for the Fire Emblem games, and it looks equally as exceptional here, and the gameplay looks like Fire Emblem gameplay has for 30 years now, with, there have been additions, but it has remained very, very similar over time. They also showed off a new Japanese trailer for the Fire Emblem and Persona Shin Megami Tensei crossover, which looked exactly like you would expect from a crossover of Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem. It looked okay. It looked pretty cool, honestly. If you are a fan of those series, I'm sure that game will appeal to you. There's no reason to believe it wouldn't. And ending with a couple other quick trailers they showed of previously announced games, we got a new trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is getting released on December 5th. So that's cool. I think that game looks super awesome. And so I'm glad we are getting it this year instead of some delayed release, as often occurs with JRPGs. We also saw more of Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer, which is a game where you design people's homes like an interior designer. That seems super weird, but okay. I'm sure there are people who will enjoy that. That doesn't look at all appealing to me. So that is, I believe, coming for the 3DS. And then they did show off a new trailer for Yoshi's Woolly World, which continues to look adorable, and that I am almost certainly going to get. And lastly, as far as previously announced stuff, they showed a new trailer for Super Mario Maker and announced it is coming on September 11th. And let's move on to newly announced stuff. I would say that not a single one of these announcements got me even remotely excited. I can't say I'm expecting to get any of them. So keep that in mind as I talk about this, that it is absolutely not looking especially exciting to me. We've got The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, which looks to be a follow-up to the classic Game Boy game Four Swords Adventures. That may have been on the GameCube also. I don't know. I've lost track of all the different places you can play the different Zelda games, but the Four Swords game, which was a cooperative Zelda experience that was on a handful of platforms, and this one is going to be on the 3DS, utilizing visuals similar to those seen in was it a couple of years ago. We got Link Between Worlds, so it will have visuals similar to those. They said it is 3 players instead of 4 players this time. Because the core mechanic involves stacking on top of each other, and 4 players was too tall. So, mind-blowing choices there. Honestly, like that's not even sarcastic. Like mind-blowing choices. We need to stack people on top of each other. But we can't have 4 players then. Well, instead of making them smaller, we're just gonna not have 4 players then. I don't know. You know what? Nintendo has always gone with this gameplay first route that I find really great. And if they say that 4 players wasn't as fun, then it probably wasn't as fun. So 3 players, I'm sure that's absolutely fine, and it fits with the whole Triforce, 3 triangles, 3 sides to a triangle, 3, 3, 3. It's a Miyamoto theme, so that's entirely okay with me. And it looks like a combination between Four Swords and Link Between Worlds. So that should be fun for Zelda fans, of which I cannot count myself among. Next up, we saw a new Metroid Prime. Yay, I'd been asking for this. Oh, wait, no. It's for 3DS, not for Wii U, and it's a cooperative and competitive multiplayer game. that has to be one of the most disappointing things I could possibly imagine having occurred at Nintendo's Direct. We got the Metroid Prime, but it was for 3DS, and it was some multiplayer BS. Oh my god, that's that. I I don't understand. I seriously do not understand. It's staring them right in the face. I don't know. Just mind blowing. Some of the choices Nintendo makes, some of these so obvious things that they could be doing that they're not. I don't know. I don't know what goes on inside their heads. Obviously, they're crazy. If you know, note that they turn themselves into Muppets for a press conference. That's pretty crazy, right? Like that's crazy. They're crazy people. Anyways, moving on, there was a Animal Crossing themed version of Mario Party. They didn't actually say those words, but that's what it was. It was Mario Party, just was Animal Crossing instead of Mario. That seems even more dumb than Mario Party, but will sell a lot of Animal Crossing amiibos, so good work for them on making money there. They also announced probably the thing that I thought looked most interesting, which was a crossover of the handheld and console Mario RPG series, Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario, in a game called Mario and Luigi Paper Jam that had characters that were both paper and not paper. So that should be pretty funny, actually. So that was maybe the most interesting thing that we saw there. I think it has potential for some clever gameplay mechanics and some clever storytelling bits involving the dual versions of each character. So maybe a little bit excited for that one. It's definitely more than anything else that was shown at that event. As far as mobile RPGs go, they also showed the first English trailer for Yokai Watch. I believe it's Yokai is how it's pronounced. I apologize if that is incorrect. It is a game from Level 5, who are known to the DS crowd as the creators of Professor Layton, but are more known to the RPG crowd as having worked with both Sony and Square Enix on a number of RPGs, including the PS2 Dragon Quest and the Dark Cloud series, Rogue Galaxy. What else have they done? They created Ni no Kuni, so a very long time RPG developer that has made some pretty fantastic titles for a variety of platforms, not just in the RPG space. And Yokai Watch is something of a mix between Pokemon and more. It almost looks sort of like an Atlas-inspired social simulator. So that looks to have a lot of potential for the Pokemon crowd, and supposedly in Japan it has been doing really well with that audience. So we'll see how it does here. Level 5 stuff usually hits really hard on the DS and maybe not so much on consoles these days. So hopefully that works out for them. And I miss some of Level 5's more ambitious console stuff. I think they made some awesome console RPGs. I think Ni no Kuni, you could argue, was the greatest JRPG of the previous generation. So not having it a successor to it on the PS4 and Xbox One, I think is a bit disappointing, or any new Level 5 RPG. So I do hope they go back to making some large scale console RPGs in the future. Maybe Sony could contract them to do one. They certainly could use another exclusive, and they have been known to do that with Level 5 in the past. So maybe that will occur. That would be nice. The last newly announced thing we saw, I guess, Yokai Watch. I mean, it's been previously released in Japan, but this was announcement of a North American version. So I guess that I probably should have listed that under previous things. The last thing was a new Mario Tennis game, which I don't have anything additional to add to that statement. It's Mario Tennis, just it looks prettier. There might be new gameplay mechanics. I have no idea. I've never played Mario Tennis in my life. So it looked like a tennis game that had Mario characters and Mario power-ups. So I expect that is probably what all previous Mario Tennis games have been, but I have no idea. I've never played one. Maybe they have a bunch of weird other Mario stuff. Maybe not, I don't know. So it was Mario Tennis. It was what I would expect a Mario Tennis game to look like. Whatever it actually is, I don't know, but I assume it will be about as well received as previous Mario Tennis titles, which were supposed to be pretty decent actually as far as tennis games go, of which there aren't that many. So yeah, people seem to like that series. More power to them. So those were all of the games discussed. They did not announce a new Mario platformer, despite spending a significant chunk of time at the end of the show talking about this being the 30th anniversary of Mario's initial release in North America. So I don't know why. They did not reveal anything in of that nature. Maybe they are giving all of their focus to Super Mario Maker, which I think is a fascinating choice for them. But hey, I think it is very clear at this moment. I do not understand why Nintendo does what Nintendo does. So sometimes they seem absolutely brilliant. Other times I just can't understand the choices they make. And this year is going to be one of those years that I just do not understand why any of what happened. But I'll deal with it. So that sadly covers the Nintendo press conference. I wish there was something more exciting to talk about, but that was all they discussed. It was not especially interesting, although worth noting that I believe almost all of the titles, if not all of the titles, not including Metroid, I believe was next year, but outside of that, I'm pretty sure all of the titles shown were coming this year. So that's different than what any of the other press conferences have been, especially as we get into the Square Enix one in a moment. So at least all of the games on display here are games that we'll be playing this year, and they didn't announce games for further in the future, but on the same token, it's not like we'd be playing them before next E3 anyway, so they can just announce them then and release them then. And if they want to go that route, I guess that's fine. But for those who want to be able to look forward to new games from Nintendo, this press conference was a bit disheartening, and especially compared to everything else that we have seen at E3 thus far. Nintendo just nailed it last year, and it felt very underwhelming this year. But these things go in cycles. You only have so many development studios, and if you have a year at a publisher where many of your development studios release a title all in the same year, then you're going to have a slow year the next year, and you probably had a slow year the previous year as well. So, in that train of thought, let's move on to Square Enix, because obviously they had a bunch of massive projects they all had coming due about the same time. So that's pretty cool to see such a massive presence from Square Enix, and it's it was a jam-packed show. They showed as many games, if not more, than Sony did. So, and obviously all published by themselves. So just an absolutely massive lineup. Some games looked more impressive than others, but everything they showed, I thought, looked decently interesting, and a couple of surprises, things I was absolutely not expecting. So let's get right on to them. They opened the show with Just Cause 3 from Avalanche. I had forgotten that the Just Cause series was published by Eidos, so that obviously is now published by Square Enix. So we got to see some more destruction from Just Cause, and as usual, their destruction looks absolutely absurd in the most amazing way. I was not a huge fan of the previous games in the series. I just didn't think they controlled especially well, but I did appreciate all the destruction you had caused in them, so hopefully they did spend a lot of time in this trailer and in this demo focusing on how they have improved the core movement mechanics. So if they can make this game play moment to moment, as well as it is capable of performing at its best moments, then I think they could have something really special on their hands. So good luck to the Avalanche team, and I hope they manage to deliver on their promises there. We got to see more of Rise of the Tomb Raider. We obviously saw that lengthy gameplay demo yesterday at Microsoft's press conference. So today we just got a bit more behind the scenes stuff with the creation of the actual Laura character and the character model. And it is a very impressive looking character model. Like, if you're going to spend time focusing on the amount of effort put into making a character model, you better really damn hope that model looks fantastic, and it does really look fantastic. It's a great looking model, but not exactly what people wanted to see. I think there is still the director of the game, I believe it was up on stage, specifically name called tomb raiding and bringing back tombs as a major focus of this game, but still very little gameplay of actual raiding of tombs shown from this game. But that doesn't really work as well at a press conference as the type of cinematic action that they showed yesterday. So understandable, but still worth noting that despite the claims that there is more tomb raiding in this Tomb Raider, we have yet to see very much of it. In addition to that, they also showed off a new Tomb Raider mobile game called Tomb Raider Go. If you're familiar with Hitman Go, it is a turn-based take on the Hitman series. This is a turn-based take on Tomb Raider, which to me sounds much stranger than a turn-based take on Hitman did, but we'll see how that works out for them. I think their mobile Hitman stuff has been very well received, so hopefully this will be equally well received as those titles were. Moving on to Final Fantasy. Let's talk about all the Final Fantasy stuff at once, because then we can move on and not talk about more Final Fantasy stuff. The Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer was shown again. They didn't say anything additional other than they'll be talking about it more in the autumn, I believe they said, which would line up with the Tokyo Game Show, so that's probably where they will be showing additional stuff on that, and maybe even later than that, maybe at GDC next year or something, but no additional details from the Final Fantasy VII Remake. They also announced that the port of the PC version of Final Fantasy VII that they had said last year was coming to the PS4 is still coming, and an iOS version is coming as well. They also showed off World of Final Fantasy, and it is the exact same trailers they showed last night. They did talk a little bit more about it, introducing the director of it and saying that it was designed to appeal to new fans and to children and families, but they still have not said exactly what you do in the game. I still don't have a good sense of how the game actually plays. I don't even know if it is an RPG or not. So difficult to understand what that is, but we did get at least a little tiny bit more. And then they also announced a Final Fantasy phone app that seems to allow you to look up information about various games and characters and locations and so forth from the series. And they did not say much additional beyond that, other than it was indeed coming to English-speaking audiences in addition to Japanese ones. And they showed about 30 seconds of footage from Final Fantasy 14 and 15 each during montages, but those were the only mention of either of those games there. And I believe that concludes the Final Fantasy stuff. There was a lot of name checking of the name Final Fantasy, but very little actual Final Fantasy shown here. Whew. Okay, moving on. They also showed a bunch of Kingdom Hearts stuff. This was actually shown by the same guy who was showing all the Final Fantasy stuff. He was on stage for quite a while, obviously a major producer there. He showed first the new Kingdom Hearts mobile phone game called Unchained Key, which has an interesting looking art style, and Square Enix is making a mobile phone game, guys. Who would have guessed? So That's coming, and they also showed some much more lengthy gameplay footage of Kingdom Hearts 3, which looked pretty nice. It looks pretty. I think it was a bad choice. They said the environment they were showing was based on the world of Tangled, which is the Disney film based on the Rapunzel fairy tale. But Tangled is not an especially unique looking world, and outside of the iconic tower, there's very little about it that is noteworthy as far as creating a game environment. I mean, it gives you an excuse to create a wooded, foresty location, but that's all it is. It's a very standard looking fairy tale environment. And that said, it was still looked nicely done, and I think all the crazy Disney ride based super attacks that were introduced, I believe, in the PlayStation Vita game, or was it a 3DS game? One of the two. Looked quite nice in this as well. So, uh, decent looking Kingdom Hearts 3 reveal trailer of the gameplay. Not super excited just because Kingdom Hearts makes no sense anymore. So, uh, but there were very obviously big fans of Kingdom Hearts at that press conference, and they seemed to really dig what they saw. So I guess Square Enix is doing something right. Okay, let's finish off some of the uh, Japanese arms of the studio stuff with a handful of additional RPGs they talked about. First off, the thing that was probably the least expected from me, but now is probably the most fascinating thing coming out of Square Enix right now, is a sequel to Nier that is being co-developed by Platinum Games. And the reason that's interesting to me is that Nier had a really exceptional story, really exceptional music, really exceptional premise, but fell incredibly flat when it came to its combat design and its quest design. And if anyone knows how to spice up some combat, it would be Platinum Games. So I think you have the potential there for something just absolutely fantastic if you can combine the crazy ideas of Nier with the great combat mechanics of Platinum. Your end result would be, would have to imagine, something pretty great. So I'm actually quite looking forward to that. Uh, I might even try to finish Nier. Maybe not. That would be a terrible idea. Maybe I will. Oh, that game was so bad. Uh, but had such certain elements that were so good. So I do hope this lives up to the potential of the original. So I do think it is the most promising thing that they announced. Honestly, it has the potential to be just masterful, or it could be as much of a tragic misfire as the original was. So I wish them the best of luck, and I do hope they nail it this time. They also showed off the previously announced new Star Ocean game, which is entitled Integrity and Faithlessness, as the lengthy Star Ocean subtitles tend to be. And it the demo they showed focused on the fact that there were seamless transitions into and out of battles and interactive cutscenes that they made it sound like you could walk away from in a similar way to some Western RPGs. So that is that's cool. I thought it was fascinating that they talked about their focus on making it seem less filmic and more interactive in a manner similar to some Western RPGs. And I think Tri-Ace has always had great combat systems, but maybe not quite as great story elements. Although I do really like the story in Valkyrie Profile. So I think focusing on those mechanics over the story of the Star Ocean series was probably a smart choice for them there. Mm-hmm. Oh, my voice is dying, man. Okay. mm. Lastly, on the RPG front, we got a new RPG that was titled Project Setsuna, from a new internal Square Enix studio called the Tokyo RPG Factory, and it is a new AAA console Japanese RPG, uh, from an entirely new series, and the president of Square Enix himself got on stage to introduce it, despite the fact that he was very obviously reading a teleprompter phonetically and did not speak a word of English. But I think they wanted him to do it just to show that Square Enix does have a very strong commitment to console JRPG, something that I think up until this year have been a bit called into question, with their focus on handheld titles and on the work of their Western studios, which is what we are going to look at right now, because outside of announcing the fact that it existed, they did not reveal any details. It was not clear if there were any additional details to be revealed. They basically said it is coming in 2016, which was actually more of a release date than they gave Kingdom Hearts 3 or any of the other RPGs they spoke of, which they mostly just said in development. So let's go to the Western stuff. We got our first gameplay reveal of Hitman. Which is just titled Hitman, and it is the new title from IO Interactive, maker of the previous Hitman titles. And they are making this sound like it is going to be more of a platform than an individual title that they will continuously add new content to and update, similar maybe to how some MMOs work. And I thought about this as they were talking about it, about whether I wanted a more contained, completable story in my Hitman games, or whether this format would work. And I came to the conclusion that the things that excite me the most about Hitman always are the structure of the individual missions, and not necessarily the overarching story behind them. They often seem relatively loosely connected, and the story is the overarching story of each game often seems very, very forced. I mean, in Hitman Contracts, which was the third game, they're all just flashbacks of sequences, or flashbacks of hits that 47 has done in the past. So there's barely any connective tissue. So I think that having just dropping connective tissue entirely is completely fine, and would absolutely work for the Hitman series, as long as each individual level still has its interesting setup and characters and so on that it always does. Then not having some sort of larger connective story is perfectly okay for that specific series. And I'd be interested in trying it. I'm curious what the pricing model will be like for it. Are we going to see basically a free app of sorts, a launcher that you can download, and then you buy the individual missions piecemeal, or is this going to be a $60 product that I can purchase? They said it would be released digitally first. So is it a $60 thing or a $40 thing that I can purchase on Steam or on one of the console services? Or is it something else entirely? It isn't entirely clear how this game is going to be structured from a payment standpoint, which I think is the main thing that we need to know about it, because there's the potential to really ruin Hitman if you go try to do a free-to-play route. But I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna structure the payment for that. So hopefully that will work out, because I do enjoy the Hitman series, and I want it to succeed going forward. And they ended the press conference with a gameplay trailer from the new Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. It looks decent visually. There was a lot of aliasing being shown, but it seems to uh, be relatively early in development. They said 2016 would be the release, not 2015. So still plenty of time to polish up the visual aspect, but the new gameplay mechanics all seem very fascinating. I think one of the main issues I had with the first game, or not the first game, but the previous game, was the lack of a long distance stealth option that was not a gun. And so having the PEPs thing built directly into your body is an improvement, and having some long range lethal options with the knives in your hands and being able to shoot the blade that comes out of your arm as a projectile adds some ways that you can perform lethal takedowns as well from a distance without utilizing bullets. And I think managing the inventory was probably my least favorite part of Human Revolution. So hopefully having some more internal methods of long distance combat will free up some inventory space, because you won't have to carry quite as much ammunition and all of the variety of different weapons. So that will hopefully go well. It's interesting how in Deus Ex 2, Invisible War, I believe it was called, they decided to convert all ammunition into a single supply so that you put the same thing into a rocket launcher that you did into a machine gun, or as you did into a pistol, and so on. And a lot of people complain that that wasn't especially realistic, but I think it was a smart choice from a gameplay standpoint, because you didn't have to worry about not having the right type of ammunition for the weapon that you had, which is something that is frustrating to no end whenever any game does that. But as I said, hopefully this will lead to some improvements on that front. And those items also seem to provide some interesting options regardless. So excited about the new Deus Ex, about the new Tomb Raider, about the new Hitman, about the new Just Cause and Nier, and maybe a little less excited for Kingdom Hearts stuff and for Star Ocean. But overall, a decent show, I would say. Not as impressive as Microsoft or Sony, but more impressive probably than either EA and definitely more impressive than Ubisoft or Nintendo. I think EA had, as far as the pacing of this conference went, it was vastly superior to EA with its lengthy interviews that they featured in their sports segments. And I'm aware, it's EA. Half of their lineup is sports games. That they do not have enough games that they make, not counting sports games, to put together a whole press conference. If you don't want to see sports games, you shouldn't be going to an EA press conference. But there are ways they can do it, I think, in ways that seem a little more interesting. Just there are a bunch of interviews with people that either felt like they didn't want to be there, or that they had very little to do with the product they were supposedly trying to sell. And it slowed things down a lot. Whereas Square Enix's conference really, moved from game to game to game. They got through a ton of games in just over an hour. They spent to prove a point. Their conference was about 10 minutes less long than Bethesda's. Yet Bethesda had a total of, I believe, 5 games at their show, and these guys had well over a dozen. I couldn't even count them all. There were a ton of games here that they were going through, so much so that they had montages of their own titles, which is something you very rarely see at third-party conferences. So just a massive lineup from Square Enix. A large number of games, and hopefully the majority of them will turn out well. I enjoyed the previous entries in a lot of these series, so we'll see. We'll see going forward. Okay, I think that is going to wrap things up for me. I cannot keep talking. My voice is going, and I cannot watch any more press conferences before I go insane. So, thank you for tuning in this year for our live E3 coverage at the Lotus Press. There are obviously 3 full days, I believe, 2 or 3 full days of show floor booth coverage that you can get from plenty of other websites. And I will be providing my written thoughts on the press conferences from yesterday and today later in the week as I write them. I just could not keep up with the rate these things were going. There was just no time to write all of this stuff in between the various press conferences while also talking about them and watching the conferences themselves. So as the week goes on, I will write up my thoughts in maybe a more coherent manner than they were presented here. But I did want to still give my initial just gut reactions to each conference as they occurred. So you can choose to ignore these or not. I think most people are certainly are not going to be interested in watching this unedited talking of me for several hours. But if that is something you're interested, then here it was. Hopefully next year we can get some other people on here to make things a little more dynamic and to give some other perspectives beyond what I personally think about all this, and to give my voice a break occasionally. Until then, though, this is Seth Gollivan for the Ludus Press signing off for E3 2015. I will be back next year, and enjoy the rest of the week. Take a look at all the additional trailers that are sure to be released. I will see you guys on Thursday for the latest episode of the Ludocast. Goodbye.